All right, so I know we've had a good day. We've enjoyed ourselves so far, and want to take it a notch higher. So my panelists this particular afternoon are top executives at Safaricom and Microsoft. And I don't feel like I am justified to introduce them in this particular instance, so I'll ask them to introduce themselves, what they do. They have really cool jobs, by the way, so cool jobs, yes, and they'll definitely tell us about their jobs and the role they play in the society. So we'll start with Kendi.
Thank you. My name is Kendi Ntwiga. I'm the country leader for Microsoft in Kenya. In Microsoft, I am in charge of making sure that our global mission is achieved in Kenya, where our global mission is to make sure that we empower every individual and organization to do more. When I'm not working for Microsoft, I love storytelling, so I'm either usually listening, coaching, doing anything stories.
All right, I like that. All right. The only gentleman on the panel?
Thank you. My name is James Maitai. I'm the Director of Technology in Safaricom, and I take care of network. So my role is to ensure 24/7, every Kenyan, every corner of the country is connected to another Kenyan, connected to opportunities, and the economy works. And when I'm not doing this, of course, I like dancing, surprisingly, unbelievable as it is. I lead a lot, and I work out.
All right. So what's your favorite song? What song are you listening to now? What's your favorite jamming song? That song you hear, you want to dance?
Do you really want to find out?
Yeah. All right, thank you, James. By the end of this talk show, definitely you have told us what song you dance to. Rita?
My name is Rita Okuthe, and I'm the outgoing Chief Enterprise Business Officer for Safaricom. In my role, I build technology solutions for public sector, corporates, and SMEs to help them run their businesses more efficiently using technology. I am also the chairperson of Kenya Pipeline Company, a role that I've held for a couple of months now. When I'm not working, what do? I dance, actually, like James. I have a penchant for bongo flavor. I like bongo flavor quite a bit. And I also read a lot, and I mentor as well. I spend a lot of my time mentoring young women.
All right, so allow me to start this conversation off with the two ladies on my panel. You all hold very senior positions in your different organizations. I mean, I know somebody that's watching, probably watching this particular feed, and they're asking themselves, does her story match with my story? I'm living in a single room. I'm just about to finish campus probably, or I've finished campus. I'm really trying to get that particular job. I'm not probably able to. I mean, share with us your leadership stories up until this particular point in your careers. So Kendi.
Thank you. My leadership story starts from way back. And this is when I knew I wanted to get into technology. My father was among the first people who did computer science. And when I was 11, I sat and I was so curious about what it is that he was doing. So at that age of 11, I sort of knew I wanted to get into the tech side of life. But then between the age of 11, which is primary school, then getting into high school, I sort of got a bit distracted. I can say I got naughty a little. Okay. And high school was not easy for me. So that when I got into Form 4, and I say this because I know some of you who are watching are probably in high school. So when I got into Form 4, I realized, the only way out of high school is KCSE. And I had sleepless nights. So then I concentrated and I said, easy, my mom was a teacher. She told me, focus on maths and sciences because most girls don't. And if you do, I can bet you will do well. So I took her advice, and that's how I got myself into the sciences. Now, I got into college. I thought, again, I would be very focused. But I think when you're a leader, you're either a leader on the good side or on the bad side. And you need someone to direct you, to mentor you, to coach you into maintaining a good path. So by the time I got out and I'm getting to 25, I panicked. And then at 25, I decided I have to take charge of my life. So a step at a time, I thought if I do what seems like the right thing, a day at a time, a step at a time, consistently, at the end, it will add up. And that for me meant if I'm given any assignment, stretch yourself, do it well, stand out. So I did that from 25. That's when my life changed, really. Just making the decision to go the extra mile. So at the age of 25, given assignments, I'm outstanding, given the next assignment. I have mentors, I have coaches, I have sponsors who I hope somewhere will define, or you can check what each does. So, and as I thrived, I got elevated to the next assignment. So that when I got recommended for my first leadership role, when I was in HP, because that's where I started my career at the age of 27, and I was joining my next at Oracle, and I was joining my next at Intel. So by the time I then got into Microsoft, it was the same drill. Someone had seen how I worked, then they recommended me, and I took their hand enough to trust that where they were guiding me was fine. And that's my journey.
Wow. What I'm getting from your journey is a lot of diligence, well, minus the panicking at cases,
Yes.
you point, but everything else was very well calculated, and you had an ambition towards what you eventually wanted to achieve. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Rita, you have a very unique story. You've told it so many times. Please, this is your opportunity to talk to somebody else out there and just inspire them and tell them your particular journey when it comes to leadership.
So unlike Kendi, I wasn't as focused. And I wasn't as clear what I wanted to do. I think from my last name, you can tell which part of Kenya I come from. And in that society, children are brought up to be certain things, at least in our days. So in every home, you had an engineer, you had a lawyer, you had a doctor. We took professional courses. We didn't do BA because BA is Bachelor of anything. So I was brought up to be the lawyer in my family. And all of my life, I knew I would do law. I didn't know why, but I knew I would do law. I'm not of the 844 ilk, so I did my O-levels, did well, went into A-levels, and took courses that required a lot of reading because lawyers technically read a lot. So I did history, literature, geography, and music. I've always done music. Then during my holidays, my A-level holidays, one of the things that I did that I think would be helpful to a young person, if you're sitting out there and you're on a break, learn a skill. Learn a skill. My parents were insistent that you've got to do a language. So I did a language, French. I didn't understand why, but I did it anyway. They were insistent you had to play an instrument. I wanted to do the guitar. They said, no, play the piano. So I'm a pianist as well. But I also learned computer science. Those days, you know, computers were a big deal. You actually went to college to learn what, I don't know, maybe only, there are very few people who can relate to that. Some of you grew up with TVs that were, you know, already built into the wall. When I tell my daughter that I used to have a TV at home that used to stand on the floor, she's like, what do you mean it stood on the floor? I said, no, these TVs that came that are on the wall are things of the past. But anyway, back to my story. So, I went during my A-level holidays, and I did a stint in an advertising agency, and I loved it. And really, I started out by making tea. Then I started to do a bit of work around artwork, passing artwork from one person to the other. Being the youngest person in the room, they would always ask me, what do you think? These were the days of brands like Princess Patra. It's a long time ago. And I really loved it. So when I was called to the campus to do law, I went for my first law lecture. And I thought, I mean, no offense to lawyers, but I thought, what a pompous bunch of, you know, big English speakers. We're talking about the law of tort, and I just thought, you know, I can't do this. So I said, let me go and do marketing because I liked marketing. And by the time I went to the marketing department, at the University of Nairobi, it was full. It was BCom, it was full. So they said, look, the only thing that you can do that's close to marketing is Bachelor of Economics or a BA. So Bachelor of anything, which, you know, I had been warned from my childhood not to dare wander down that path. So I went to University of Nairobi, and true enough, the only opportunity that was available was a Bachelor of Arts. So I took a BA, I took Econ, I think government, sociology, I believe. I'd never done economics in my life. Never done econ in my life. And, but I wanted to do marketing, so I was quite determined. I was quite passionate about this. At least it wasn't law. So I did my marketing, my economics, I finished my degree, did quite well actually. My first job, incidentally, and I want to tell people out there, you know, sometimes you look at senior executives and you think we drop from the sky. We actually don't. Some of us have very humble beginnings. My first job was as a compere on a roadshow truck. And I would get up on those trucks and do this whole, you know, selling Dettol, Jake, and then after that, we didn't have the pleasure of having researchers. So you do your gig, then you get off, and then you go and you ask people, okay, how much Jake are you using? You go from shop to shop. That's probably why I like dancing. But that's where I started. And I started in the trenches. And I also started in the trenches because, you know, now I was not the lawyer. So, you know, it had all been worked out. One of my uncles had a law firm. I was supposed to slip into it. But now I was not the lawyer, so, you know, really there was no room for me at the table. And so I hustled it out quite a bit. From there, one of my clients actually picked me. Going back to what Candice said, whatever you're doing, do it with passion. I had the added advantage of knowing French. I had the added advantage of being a pianist. So in my spare time, I was also able to make some money by teaching piano. This is why I say pick up a skill. Could be hairdressing, could be DJing, could be a makeup artist, could be anything. But pick up a skill, because the good book says is your gift will bring you before kings. And so one of my clients picked me up. I started off at Everready. I started off as a marketing executive, again, just pushing paper around. Then grew through the ranks, became a marketing manager, then became a regional marketing manager for Energizer. And it was at that point that Uganda was starting off with mobile telephony via MTN. And because of some of the people I knew, and you know, I urge you to treat everybody well. It's very important. Treat everybody well, because you do not know who will open the next door for you. And as a result of me engaging with people and, you know, giving people opportunities, I remember there was a radio station that came to town and they were looking for an advert and nobody believed in them. And I said, okay, we'll put an Everready advert on this channel. And they were the ones who told me, look, there's somebody looking for a marketing person in Uganda. I had never seen what a phone, I knew those big phones. I grew up in the days of the big phones when phones were 300K and you top up with airtime of 50K. And then I went to Uganda. It was completely different. Everybody had a phone up to the house girl. It was quite a shock for me. But that's where I started off my career in telco. So I'm not a technology person. I'm actually a marketeer. I'm an economist, actually, then trained in marketing as a master's. And it also goes to show that there are no limits. And you can change course halfway. Because if you're not passionate about what you're doing and you're not happy about it, you will not excel. And do not live somebody else's dream. Live your own dream and believe in your own dream. I encourage a lot of young people who I mentor. Look, if you want to do hairdressing, I don't have a problem. Hairdressers make a lot of money. It's not like our days. You know, nowadays hairdressing, if you did hairdressing, you know, you were thrown out of the window. But whatever your passion is, excel at it and be very good at it. And so I grew through the ranks. I wouldn't say that, you know, okay, I was always a leader in school. I didn't understand why, because I always thought I was amongst the naughty ones, but I was always a leader in school. And then, you know, as I got into my career, I also then began to lead. But I also remember a point in my career where I was stuck at the same level for a long, long time. I felt stuck. And I went to my supervisor, because I'd been at this sort of, just before you get into senior management, you're between middle management and senior management. I was there for about 6 years, 7 years, and I complained to my supervisor. And my supervisor told me, you know, a career is not like instant coffee. There are things that you only learn through time and through maturity. And he told me, take this time to really understand how organizations work, what makes people tick, how processes work. Once you've learned that, you'll always be able to pick out where something is wrong. So patience is also important. It's not an instant world. I know a lot of young people these days, everything is instant. Huh? For us, it wasn't. A movie would be released in the US, it would get to Kenya even a year later. I remember breakdance coming to Kenya, you know, months after my cousins told me they had seen it in the US. So it's not instant and you need to be patient.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wow. Very, very, very elaborate. Let me bring in the gentleman in the room. Immediately after James, we can all pick up on this. One thing that's common amongst the three of us is our passion for giving women an opportunity. James, a leader in tech, giving so many opportunities to women in your particular department. And obviously, you've created a bigger space for women to thrive. Why? Why are you this passionate about women? You know, you're a proper he for she ambassador. I just need to know why.
Wow. I need to start by saying, first, I'm a husband, I'm a father, so I have a daughter, and I have sisters. So the why comes naturally. And I think one of the key things that I picked very early on in my student years is we were in a class of 40 students in engineering at the University of Nairobi, and we only had 3 ladies. So early on, I knew this area is one that needed a bit of, you know, very strategic view if we are to change the game. Then when along my many years into my career in Safaricom, I realized that in technology, at this point we are about 1,000, but then we were quite a smaller number. We only had less than 10% of women doing technical courses. And it didn't seem right, because I believe when you sit at the table of men and women and you have both voices heard, you can never go wrong and you make the right decisions. So early on, I think a group of women came together who are practitioners in technology. This could be IT, could be in the network, generally technology discipline, and they were very passionate because they felt like you've made it this far, despite, of course, by the time you make in technology as a woman, there are more obstacles than for a boy child, and they felt they should come together. So early on, I became a patron, and I've worked with many of my colleagues in that area. And some of the other reasons why what that brought them together is Safaricom supports SDG. I think 3 of them. One of them is on equitable education, quality education. There's also innovation and science. So we felt that we needed to come up with a program that would not only just bring more women to work in technology, but also open up the pipeline, because the pipeline for STEM courses was, we're still not there, but I think we've improved a bit, but was tilted. So there was need to have outreach programs to go down there to the grassroots at the beginning, and we came up with 6 programs targeting a girl child at every stage in her career and in her education. And one thing led to another. Today, as we speak, we have what we call Women in Technology, and it's a group of very passionate women with a lot of men also supporting them at the background. And being at the helm of technology, I'm privileged to also lead this team, and I support them quite a lot. And I think we've seen a lot of impact, and the pipeline is opening. As we speak today, we are more than 25% women population in technology. A few years down the line, we're less than 6-7%, so you can see the improvement. But not even here internally, but in the industry, I think we're beginning to see a lot of women take courses in technology. Kendi here, she can tell you she has mastered. She's at the top of her game in technology, so the pipeline is opened up, and it's that passion that you believe you can always get more people to do it. And young people, I'm happy that they're watching this. You can excel in everywhere. I think people are all equal. Just depends on what you want. So how can we make it better for women to want courses in technology, STEM courses? Yeah.
Let me rope you in, Kendi. Engineering. Right now, there's a lot of space for women to do engineering. I'm assuming back then the space was a little bit tighter. There's all this misconception that it's a man's field, it's a man's world. How did you deal with that stereotype, and how were you able to now get to the top of your game? Because I want you to talk to that particular lady that's like, I'm passionate about engineering, but it's a man's world. Because till today in 2020, there's still that misconception that women cannot do well in engineering.
So if I was to speak about how it broke for me, like when I started, I said my father. Consistently, strangely so, there has been a man somewhere pulling my hand. And that's why it's brilliant to see James here. So as much as we advocate for it as women, we need as well the men to join us or to even start it and be like, why is a woman missing in this conversation? Because when they do that, when you do that as men, then you give us the confidence of feeling as a woman that I'm not being misjudged first. You rightly said before it was less people. It's true, like he said, you find 10% or 6% of the class is what had women. But then we had to keep pushing and doing what we must do. And sometimes you'd hear comments like, why are you working so hard? You don't have to, because you'll be provided for, just that whole notion of why do you have to do this? But my question to the young woman listening, why not? We are already nurtured so well by society to be caregivers. From the time when we are young, we are trained as women to think about everyone else and think about ourselves as the last. Imagine if we brought that natural inclination to the field of engineering or to the field of creation, which is really the STEM field, to the field of solving problems. Right now, everything is technology. If it's transport, it's tech-based. If it's food, how can we improve it by tech? Anything is in tech is present in everyday life. So then as a woman, if I choose or if you choose not to engage in STEM, you're choosing to be out of the everyday conversations. You're choosing not to be part of the creation. And so I would urge you to choose it differently. We've done it. We're still doing it. We've not stopped. We sit here, yes, celebrated, and I know Rita will say the same. But there's still so much more we have to do as women, and we need that pipeline to keep going. We need, when we look back, we see there's a variety we are handing over to. So you can't stop, and you have to keep going. And when you feel like you want to stop, think that others did it, so you can do it. And there are moments, even personally in life. I remember when I got my firstborn, and I'm on maternity leave, and I'm thinking to myself, who is going back to that office? I have this child who's looking at me. I have this home I have to run. And the only thing that kept me going when I thought of the Ritas who had gone before me, and they did it. So if they did it, what makes me think I can't? So that bit, but also think about that if you choose to be out of this conversation, you're really choosing to be out of the everyday life, because engineering and creation and tech has become everyday life.
Thank you so much. Rita, allow me to confess, the first time I ever met you was at a coding hackathon. It was organized by, I think it was called DOT or something. And I had brought girls all the way from Samburu to come to this particular hackathon. And one thing that was very peculiar is that you brought them close to yourself and you hugged them, and then you told them, regardless of where you come from, don't worry, you can still be the me of the next 10 or 10, 15 years. Every time somebody thinks about Rita, they think about women empowerment at the same time. Why are you this passionate? You would have chosen, you had the option to choose, you know what, I've done it, I've lived my best, deuces, I'm out. Everybody should find a way, because, you can say, you know what, nobody was there for me. Why are you this committed to women in leadership?
I'm committed to women empowerment because women make a fundamental difference in society. And also because, as you rightly said, when we were growing up, there were not many people around us who were encouraging us to go on. So having gotten to where I am, it behooves me to support other women. There is no point having a table that is full of 2 or 3 women in a room of 50 people, making a difference. However, the more women you bring on the table, the more opportunity men have to see women at work. And men, as Kendi said, need to give room for women. But we as women also, when we're given the opportunity, we need to do things. Number one, we need to put our hands up. Number two, we need to take the opportunity. And number three, we need to believe we can do it. So a lot of the times you find that women can actually do it, but we are hesitant because by nature, we are perfectionists. So we want to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row. You're at about 90% certainty, you know, at worst, at best 150%. Then you put your hand up. A man here like James, and I've seen James in many meetings that I sit in at Exco, at 30%, he's like, I've got this. And I'm thinking, James, you don't have this. I know that you know that I know you don't have this. But it's like, I've got this, and I'm going to do it. And I think women, that encouragement, just to say, look, it doesn't matter where you've come from. And really, it doesn't. It doesn't matter what your background is. Put your hand up, step up, you will fall. You will make mistakes. Some will be epic, but keep moving. And I think that's one thing that we as women can learn from men. Men don't doodle and waddle over their mistakes. A man will fall today. Tomorrow it'll be like, nothing happened. He's moved on. He doesn't remember anything. As women, we have memories that take us 10 years back. So I'm committed to breaking some of these strongholds that women have in their own minds. And by empowering them, that's how you do it. And by reaching out to women who feel that they can never be like you, young girls who feel that, you know, I can never make it, and telling them, look, where you come from does not determine where you're going. And that's what I firmly believe. And that's why I'm committed to it and very passionate about it.
Love it. Thank you so much. And this is a question now to all of us, and but I'll obviously start with James. All right, so many young women go into the corporate world, corporate Kenya, you know, with passion, energy, verve, grit. They are there for the hustle. You know, some of these ladies get jobs very early when they are starting out, 23, 24. They are ready. They have lined up the ambition. This is what I want to achieve. But after some time, this energy, this verve seems to fall off. Now, I'm asking, what do you think is holding women back from accelerating their momentum? They started out so well, then all of a sudden it's like they moved from 100 kph. They're on free gear. You know, let's just go. Let's see how far we can go with this. You know, and are there unique challenges that face women in the corporate sector? And I want James to start it off, and then we'll go to the ladies, because James, you work with women in your department. What is the inhibition? What is stopping these women?
Yeah, I think Alita alluded to part of it. And I need to be honest here, it's still a man's world, because most of the people who make decisions will be men, and they have been brought up in that old world, which Rita very well described. So men need to give way. Okay, and but I also think women need to raise their hands up and step up. But when they step up, they have to do the best, because if a woman fails, then the message people would pick is, I said you can't do it, because it's still a man's world. So that's why we have to bring out the best. So I still think in some areas, some of the roles specifically in technology are still not very well configured. And I think leadership needs to be a bit aware. And I'll give a good example. When you're starting off, a man and a woman, you know, from the age of 20 to 25, is still more flexible. But with age, you know, as you age, you have different responsibilities. You become a father for a man, you become a mother. But then, with those different roles, if the work is not well established, for example, you have to go out for a month doing field work, or you have to work at night, those things seem to disadvantage the women. And in technology, this is a big issue. So I think what needs to be done is, in terms of policy, and the men and even the women who control the work, they need to be more flexible in a manner that works for all. And I think with technology, this is possible today. So that's one of the other bigger barrier which I see. And like I said, the previous one was, of course, is still a man's world. So we have to deliberately give way and intentionally reach out to bring everyone on the table. Because if you go to the interview panels, most of these people would be men in technology. If you go to most decisions being made would be men. So we have to be conscious. And as a leader, and what I encourage the rest of my colleagues in technology to do, because it's still quite a number of men in leadership, is to be conscious. You don't have to lower any standard to accommodate women, but you just have to be conscious. Yeah, and if you do it, you'll be surprised that the best steps up. And I can confess most of the best engineers are actually female engineers.
Kendi, your stories look so easy. You've said you've moved from A to B to C. D came calling, you could not resist. I want you to tell us your corporate battles, the boardroom wars, the ceilings you've broken. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the question. When I think about the ceilings I have broken, it actually starts from when I finished uni. Because I don't know if I said this before, but I came to Nairobi from the village. So I didn't have relatives here. And I was set off, my mother set me up 18,000 bob and told me, now you do. I wasn't going to go back to the village. So then I had to look for food. And I remember earlier, I think Ritas was saying she had to go around trucks. My first paid job was actually going to the Muthaiga roundabout to hand out flyers. Now, the reason I talk about Muthaiga roundabout, I'm Meru, which means for you to go to Meru, at the time, at least the only route was to go through Muthaiga roundabout. So I'm standing in the morning. My relatives are seeing me handing out flyers. I'm supposed to be this person who's doing very well in the city. Of course, they call my mother, and it becomes a downhill story. But I had to start from there. So then I remember the job after that, now which was now supposed to be my corporate job. I went into what they would call the HQ, was doing a very good job. But then the team decided they needed to send me to a retail center. At that point, again, remember, I'm the one keeping myself in the city. I had to take the decision of, if I go to the retail center, and there's nothing wrong with the retail center, but I was very focused about what I wanted to do. But I knew if I go to the retail center, that might just be the end of me. So I decided, thank you for the opportunity, but I have to keep applying. So what I learned very early is when I'm given a task, I do it very well because I don't know who's watching. It's just that it happened to work throughout the career, as in the last 15 whatever years, it's worked as such. So it sounds like it's easy, but it's not. In between, I remember being stuck at a career point in mid management. And I needed to move so desperately. I had applied for jobs, I was a top performer, but they were not seeing how I'm moving. I remember going for interviews and they were asking me, are you done with children? Are you done with family? And I'm wondering, why do you need to ask me if I'm done with children? You've seen how I've done it before. You've seen me do it at a point where I'm actually a young mother, and I delivered. I was still the best in the things I was doing. And at that point, I had to then make the tough decision to leave the organization because the leadership of the time was not supporting my ambition. And what did I do? I left what would be a big organization, went to a smaller organization, but in a more strategic role. Because at the time, this is not my first country leadership role. The role I came from before coming to Microsoft was a smaller security company called Checkpoint, but a giant in its space of cybersecurity. I was then the country leader, and I learned on the job. And so by the time Microsoft came up, I was very good at it, and it was an easy pick for them.
Okay. Let's talk about mentorship, and I'll direct this to Rita. Rita, you're passionate about mentorship, and I don't know why I'm so inclined to ask you about mentorship and everything, but does mentorship and coaching have a role to play in promoting gender parity, especially in women empowerment?
Definitely, yes. Mentorship and coaching do have a role. And there's a difference between mentorship and coaching, and I think it's important that we understand this. A mentor is somebody who has probably walked in your shoes and walked in your journey, and you want to follow in their footsteps. So, that could be somebody within your organization, could be somebody outside, could be somebody older than you, farther than you in your career. And that's a mentor. And a mentor sort of helps you navigate and figure out where you want to go. A coach is very different. A coach is like, a football coach. He shows you where to play on the field, but the coach doesn't get on the field. So the coach helps you to understand your bigger picture, the bigger picture. You're playing in a pitch. You're playing this ball. You've got 22 other players. You've got 30,000 screaming fans. Not all of them are for you, as you realize when you lose, they all, turn against you. So your coach helps you to understand yourself as a person and how you react to some of these situations in your life. Now, your coach and the mentor can be the same person, but I've found in my experience that it's good to have, especially as a woman, to have a male coach. Because as James has pointed out, it's still largely a male-dominated world. And if you don't see things from the eyes of men, and you have everybody around you is a woman who's mentoring you and coaching you, you may miss that. Yeah? So that is important. But lastly, and I'll say this to women, and Kendi spoke to it, women need sponsors. Now, by sponsors, I don't mean what you young people, young girls who are watching that. That's not what I mean. A sponsor is somebody who can speak for you in a place where your voice would not otherwise be heard. So when men are sitting in a golf club and they're thinking, who do we pick for this role? Because really that's what happens in the background. When men go to play rounds of golf, or they go to eat meat, or they go to do that stuff, they talk about life, they talk about opportunities, they talk about how do we move forward. And in those kind of forums, because it's not often that women are invited to those forums, in those kind of forums, you need somebody who will stand up and say, I think Kendi can do the job. I think Rita can do the job. And somebody who will come and who will also defend you, and the men say, no, that's not a job for a woman. You need a man. You need somebody tough. And the man will say, no, she can do it. And so you also need a sponsor. So when these three come together, your career propels. The problem with women is that sometimes you have one of the two or two of the three, and you don't have all three, and you don't get the benefit of all three. And you need to be very clear as a woman, what are you looking for from your mentor? Because your mentor is about my career. Your coach is about life, me, the person. What kind of leader am I? How do I come across? Because sometimes you don't realize how you come across. How do I react to certain things? And then you need a sponsor, who is somebody who speaks for you in a place where your voice could never be heard, at a table where you're not even close to sitting. This is somebody who sits and says, I think so-and-so can do it, and I'll back her. So those three roles, especially for women, are very important. We're getting more and more women in those kind of roles. But still, the reality, as James said, is that there are more men.
Interesting. Are we ready for a stay-at-home man? Why? Traditionally, women have always sacrificed themselves, their careers, for the sake of their spouses. And James, being the gentleman in this particular panel, is Africa ready for a stay-at-home dad, where you as a man will allow your wife to go to the highest level, but you stay back and take care of the family?
Well, thank you for the question. I believe, yes, men can definitely stay home, but it's not easy. And it's not going to be easy because you've not been brought up and accustomed to sit back and, allow the other person to go. It's always easier the other way. And I think this is where we're coming from culturally, and the biases that we need to overcome. Having said that, I think we are seeing a lot of that today, where women are going all the way to the highest level. Men are happy taking the role, because in the end, it's about how the two of you show up as a family. So I would say we are ready, but a lot of work needs to be done.
Okay. Kendi is smiling. Kendi, what's on your mind?
Oh, wow. Are we ready for a stay-at-home man? Why does any of the two have to stay at home? Why can't both get out and be productive and then come home and present each other as a family? My view in this would be a bit controversial in that sense. I don't necessarily see why a woman, even now as it is, must be a stay-at-home, especially in our continent. We have a lot of systems in place, and systems, I mean systems in the home. Affordable childcare. Companies now are facilitating just having, whether it's mothers or fathers. I know Safaricom, even Microsoft, we have extended maternity, extended paternity, we have nursing facilities, we have childcare facilities on site. So both don't have to, we don't have to stay at home, whether it's the man or the woman. The reason I say that is because I prescribe from the big book, and the big book also has the roles that must be done or are recommended to be done by both genders. So if we mix culture, we mix technology, we mix advancement, we can find a balance where both genders go out, work, and still bring up the family.
Rita, ordinarily women in traditional sense or in what is commonly expected sacrifice so much for the sake of family. Sometimes that sacrifice constitutes careers. So I'll just take you back to that question. Do you think Africa, Kenya, is ready for a stay-at-home dad or a man that's quote-unquote less ambitious to allow the woman to take lead when it comes to ambition?
So I will put another perspective onto what Kendi has said. A stay-at-home man presumes that the woman has always been the one staying at home. That's the presumption. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking about a stay-at-home man. But I want to posit to you that women have never really stayed at home. When you talk about a stay-at-home mom, what do you mean? In traditional Africa, actually, it's the men who stayed home. They went out occasionally to hunt. But the woman, she goes out every day. She looks for water, she looks for firewood, she cooks for her children. So when you talk about a stay-at-home mom, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, because moms have never really stayed at home. The home may have been their working environment, but to work at home meant they have to go out. So I'm not sure what you mean by a stay-at-home man. Because in my view, men actually stayed at home until the colonialists came, to be honest. And then they started to work. And they started to go to work and come back in the evening. But before that, men would say occasionally go out. If you're a pastoralist society, then they would go out and look after the herds. But if you're in an agricultural society, it's the women who would actually go and till the land. So I don't think anything has changed and anything will change. But I do agree with Kendi that the good book and the big book, whichever one you prescribe to, has rules and definitions for men. And that's very important because women were created as relationship-centered. When our relationships work, we thrive. Men were created as work-centered. If a man loses a job today, you'll probably be more depressed than if your girlfriend dumps you. You'll be depressed for 2 days and you think, we'll move on to the next one. And you do so quite quickly, actually, to be honest. Women take a little bit longer. And so if a man is not working, what happens is that the fabric of society falls apart because women find it difficult to respect a man who's not putting something on the table. I don't mean you have to put everything, but you certainly must put something. I shouldn't be feeding you. And so I think when we talk about a stay-at-home dad, you've got to balance that with, how do we make sure the roles are right? Of course, there are unique circumstances. There are women who don't mind. But women as a woman naturally will begin to think, I'm feeding you, I'm clothing you, a bit of disrespect sets in, you break the family fabric. So, but my view, I posit to you that women have never been stay-at-home. I don't subscribe to that. My grandmother was never stay-at-home. In fact, she was often more out than my grandfather. My grandfather would come in the evening and say, where's the food? And my grandmother has been doing all the work. Yeah? And that's why she sends you for water, sends you for firewood, sends you for this. So.
Love it. Thank you so much. Parting shot?
So for the lady who's watching this or listening, the jail begins with the mind. I will invite you to just help yourself unlock it. Desire it, dream, go for it. If you do it consistently, and well enough, you will stand out. The extra mile is never congested. So in no time, you will stand out.
Quotes by Kendi.
I think I'll talk to the young people, both ladies and gentlemen who are out there. I think fear a man or a person who has practiced the same kick 10,000 times than a person who has practiced 10,000 kicks. So pick one area, be very good at it, because the world as it is today is very competitive and there's no room for mediocre. So if you become good at a certain field, go for it. Pick a difficult thing, don't go for easier things, and I can assure you, you'll make it. So practice your discipline, be very good at it, pick difficult things, you'll make it. It's almost guaranteed. And I think that for me is what I've considered as a lot of success. Thank you.
To the young lady around there, I'd like you to look at the 5 people who are closest to you. And if they're not somewhere you aspire or somewhere you want to go, then change your circle. Because if you do not change your circle will change you. And so you need to decide who you are, what you want to be, where you want to go, and surround yourself with the people who will take you there. And you don't need a million people. You know, I see young people these days, you have loads and loads, I don't know what you call them, buddies. There's a Sheng word, I can't remember now, but there's a word for your crew. You don't need many people to move you forward. The closest 3-4 people to you, who are they? Do they push you to become better, or they push you to remain where you are? And whatever you believe you are, then you are. But then again I say, whatever you want to become, if you can believe it, you will become it. I mean, Kamala Harris is a great example.